Buenos días, mi nombre es Pablo López. Bienvenidos al Webex del día de hoy. Vamos a ver el tema ¿Está listo para ser auditado?, donde vamos a ver información para el cumplimiento con PCI. Les recuerdo que si durante el Webex tienen alguna pregunta, pueden utilizar el área del chat para hacernos llegar la misma. Al final tendremos una sección donde daremos respuesta a las mismas. Nosotros somos una empresa de consultoría que tenemos más de 20 años de experiencia en Latinoamérica y Europa. Hemos implementado diferentes soluciones que apoyan siempre las mejores prácticas como son ITIL, ISO 27002 y COVID. El modelo de negocio que utilizamos es el siguiente. En base a la experiencia y la tecnología existente, hemos desarrollado metodologías que nos permiten ofrecerles servicios de consultoría, así como soluciones de software, además de actualización tecnológica, siempre basados en las mejores prácticas y siempre enfocados a los objetivos de su negocio. Tenemos diferentes líneas de negocio, como son el área de seguridad de la información, donde nos importa que ustedes tengan un control sobre lo que está sucediendo con su información. Quién accede a ella, en qué momento accede, si se modifica algo, que tenga quizás una notificación sobre si alguien está cambiando un campo que considere crítico o incluso un archivo que pueda tener información confidencial. Todo esto sucede en tiempo real y podemos apoyarlo con dashboards que le van a permitir tener un control sobre todo lo que esté sucediendo con su seguridad en cuanto a la información. Además, podemos apoyarlos a que tengan un intercambio de información, ya sea con sus proveedores, clientes o de manera interna, de manera encriptada. Esto puede ser a través de un FTP seguro, un correo, una nube privada o incluso a través de las carpetas compartidas. En el área de monitoreo de servicios de TI nos interesa que pueda obtener una visibilidad completa sobre lo que está sucediendo con su servicio de TI. Pueden ser quizás las ventas que está teniendo, las facturas que está recibiendo, algún movimiento de inventarios, quizás quiera controlar lo que está sucediendo con sus sucursales. Todo esto podemos mostrarlo dentro de un dashboard, lo cual le va a permitir tener un control visual de lo que está sucediendo. Además, usted puede tener el control de toda la infraestructura asociada con ese servicio y puede recibir alertas sobre cualquier comportamiento anormal. Usted puede de esta manera tener un control y tomar acciones en tiempo real. Si por alguna razón usted detectara que tiene algún cuello de botella, podemos apoyarlo a que sepa exactamente qué está ocasionando este cuello de botella. Quizás algún usuario está consumiendo demasiado en HTTP o en HTTPS, o en ese momento se están juntando muchas transferencias de tipo FTP. Les estamos dando información sobre lo que está sucediendo, qué usuarios están utilizando estos protocolos, cuál es este tipo de cuello de botella que están ustedes teniendo, y por supuesto también pueden recibir alertas que puedan ayudarlos a tomar una acción en tiempo real. En el área de control de cambios podemos ayudarles a que ustedes tengan un control completo en el ciclo de desarrollo de software. Desde el momento en el que el usuario está haciendo la solicitud de algún cambio, quizás alguna mejora o incluso alguna nueva aplicación, hasta el momento en el que se está asignando este cambio hacia los diferentes desarrolladores con los que cuente. Obviamente se tiene un control sobre todos los cambios que hacen estos desarrolladores, las pruebas correspondientes en los diferentes ambientes que se hayan creado y la posterior implementación en todas las plataformas en las que usted pueda manejar. En el área de Performance and Capacity Planning podemos ayudarles a que sepa en el día a día cómo se están comportando sus servidores, que sepa exactamente qué está ocurriendo en el procesador, en la memoria, en el disco duro, si usted encuentra que hay algún problema o algún pico, que pueda conocer exactamente qué está causando eso y que tenga información con la que usted pueda tomar decisiones. Obviamente esta información recopilada nos puede ayudar a tomar decisiones a futuro. Si usted va a tener un aumento en sus operaciones y quiere saber si los servidores con los que está actualmente trabajando son los adecuados, nosotros podemos ayudarle a que usted vea exactamente esa proyección. Si hay determinado aumento en sus operaciones, qué es lo que va a estar ocurriendo con sus servidores, cómo se va a comportar esa memoria, cómo se va a comportar el CPU, Incluso si fuera necesario hacer un cambio de servidor, nosotros podemos decirle cuál es el modelo adecuado para sus necesidades. En el área de automatización de tareas y procesos de TI, podemos apoyarlos a que cualquier flujo que tengan ustedes se pueda automatizar. Si estos flujos están en plataforma Linux, Windows, en una AIX o cualquier equipo IBM, nosotros podemos ayudarles a que esto sea automatizado y obviamente con esto vamos a quitar lo que son la dependencia de personas. Simplemente vamos a hacer que si ustedes, por decir, en un alta de usuario reciben un correo electrónico, nosotros leemos ese correo electrónico, se dan de alta los usuarios en un Active Directory, posteriormente se puede crear el espacio en un Exchange, incluso podemos utilizar lo que es SharePoint para asignar todo lo que se necesite para este usuario y después podemos utilizar esta información que recabamos para dar de alta al usuario en ambientes Linux o en servidores IBM. Lo mismo se pueden automatizar lo que son procesos de cierre diario, un llenado de inventarios que se haga de manera manual o lo que son incluso la facturación electrónica. Durante estos 20 años de experiencia hemos trabajado con diferentes clientes y aquí algunos de ellos. Además, contamos con sólidas alianzas tecnológicas con empresas líderes, lo cual nos permite ofrecerles este software de vanguardia, así como los servicios especializados. Precisamente para el Webex del día de hoy, hemos invitado a Help Systems y tenemos la participación de Pat Cameron y Robin Taitan. Hello guys, please proceed with the Webex.
Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today we're going to talk about PCI compliance and how an enterprise job scheduler can help you meet those compliance requirements. My name is Pat Cameron, and I am with Skybot Software. I've been with Health Systems about 15 years and work with a lot of customers on automating their systems and scheduling. And I'm joined today by Robin Tatum. Hey, Robin, welcome.
Good morning, Pat. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Ready to roll today.
Yeah. So my role is, or my title at least, is Director of Security Technologies. I work for the PowerTech brand. And for those of you that may not be familiar with Health Systems, that's the umbrella company. So yes, technically we are all Health Systems employees here, but we have different divisions of the company. So Pat, obviously you work with Skybot and the automation team there. And I'm on the security team under the PowerTech brand. But we're all, part of the same happy family.
Exactly. And we have a lot of synergies between all the different products that we sell. So today, this is kind of our agenda for today. We're going to be talking about PCI and the security standards and requirements that you may need to meet at your company. So we'll talk about what they are, who is PCI, what some of those specific requirements are, and then how can a job scheduler help you meet those requirements. I think when we talk about automation, and we talk about the documentation that needs to be created in order to prove that you're doing what you say that you're doing. And I think that's where automation can come in and help you out. Before we get started, I've got a couple of questions I'm just going to pop up on the screen. I just want to get kind of a feel for who's with us today, what platforms you're running, if you're using any kind of an enterprise scheduler now. We're going to be talking about Skybot Scheduler specifically, but Health Systems does have a number of different automation and scheduling tools. So what platforms do you run, and are you using a scheduler now? A lot of people are using maybe Cron or the Windows Task Schedulers, some individual schedulers, or do you have some type of an enterprise? And then are you able to automate the reporting that you need to do for your PCI compliance? Just kind of a ballpark if you've got any type of automation in place to help you with that. Because I think gathering all of that information can be quite a monumental task. And
usually that's the biggest aspect for most people, right, is collecting that data and then trying to disseminate it. It's always a handful of work.
Right, exactly. So if there's something that we can do to help you out with that, we'd love to be able to do that. So we'll take a look at how automation can help you meet those standards. Close the poll, and I should put the results up here in just a second. Sometimes it takes WebEx a minute to get it together. And let's see who we've got. Can you guys see the poll results?
Yep, I got it.
All right, so we've got some Linux and some IBM people with us today. Some robot people, thank you for joining us. Always appreciate that. And then people that have some other schedulers as well. We've got a few people that are reporting is 100% automated. It's fabulous. You should be doing a webinar today. So thanks for your input. Appreciate kind of knowing who's out there. So I'm going to pass, well, I'll drive the slides, but Robin, I'm going to pass the speaking over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what I'd like to do is just introduce kind of the concept of PCI initially. I think having a basic understanding of what and who PCI is a starting point for us here. So the payment card industry actually established a security standards council. It's a consortium of different card processing brands. I think most of us will recognize the logos on the slide here, comprising MasterCard, Visa, Discover, American Express, and JCB International. These guys got together and built out some, for want of a better word, a set of best practices that they want people to comply with in order to ensure protection of credit card data. We've been through several iterations now. Version 3, if we move forward here, is actually the latest iteration of PCI. And most of us are focused on what we call the data security standards, or PCI-DSS. There are some other standards, but the DSS is the one typically referenced. It comprises of 12 different requirements as a foundation for that regulatory mandate. And each of those 12 requirements obviously has a lot of sub-requirements within it, but it's broken down into that. So what we're doing here is looking to deal with these 12 requirements by building out a response to the QSA, the qualified assessors who are going to come in and potentially evaluate your PCI compliance. Smaller companies may be dealing with self-assessment, so if you don't have a QSA coming in, it may be based on the number of credit card transactions that you perform. You're going to fall into a different grouping of organizations, but once you get up to a certain threshold, depending on the card brand, you're going to be required to have a QSA actually attest to the fact that you are PCI compliant. Each of the brands has its own different set of criteria, but there's certainly a centralized map. The PCI standards as a whole typically work on about a 3-year life cycle. In fact, we've got some relevance here in 2015. The version 3 standards actually became active starting the beginning of this year as the version 2 standards fell off. And we've got until mid-year to actually get that kind of in an enforced state. So we want to click forward there for me, Pat. We've got some dates. Oh, maybe not. They've fallen off there. But there are some dates. June of 2015 is when we really need to be active on version 3, and that's going to be the critical date that we're interested in. One of the changes within version 3 that was very beneficial to most organizations is that the PCI Council went back and actually provided a lot of guidance and clarity on some things that kind of were a little bit of a gray area prior to version 3, meaning that instead of us having to try to interpret this ourselves, they allow us to indicate, for example, whether things are considered high, medium, or low risk. And we can focus on the high risk. So we're not dealing with a lot of small things with the same risk level as perhaps what will be considered higher risk. So having that clarity is going to make our life easier when it comes to certifying as PCI compliant.
You know what, let me pop back to that previous screen, Robin. I think we do have dates on there.
Yep, there we go. All right, that's what I was expecting. So yeah, June 15th is kind of our kickoff there, where our version 3 requirements in essence now become a requirement versus a recommendation. So that was kind of the date to keep in mind. So you've got 5-6 months to get a good handle on the version 3 mandate.
Right, awesome, and that time will fly, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. As I mentioned, PCI DSS comprises of 12 different requirements. So what I've done is list them all there just for your reference, but we've kind of highlighted the 4 or so that really have some interaction with the concept of automation and scheduling and things like that. None of the PCI requirements are going to spell out exactly in black and white, hey, click this and do that. So that's where the QSA comes in. That's where some of the self-assessment processes come in to help give us some direction. But these are the ones that we're going to focus on today.
So let's take a look at number 6.
Yeah, requirement 6 here, develop and maintain secure systems and applications. And as I said earlier, this has a fairly far-reaching, kind of reach into the organization, much beyond automation. But we don't want to overlook the idea that automating processes is a kind of part of making sure that your system environment and your applications are secure. This may comprise of things like change control. When we have application modification, we want to make sure that the implications of that are managed. We may use a scheduler to actually implement code from a test environment into production. We want to keep those environments separate. That's a big thing for PCI. We want to develop in a development environment and then ultimately put that up into production. And we want to control the access to the production environment so that we don't have programmers accessing that information. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to ensure the integrity of the database, making sure that our credit card information is only viewed by those that have business requirements, and we have standardized processes in place. Now, Pat, do you know the leading cause of data breaches in 2014?
I do not. My guess is
a trick question, actually, because
outsider, though.
Yeah, the answer is actually humans. Every single breach that we dealt with last year was sourced by a person, and that's really, at the end of the day, what it comes down to. Computers are not going to breach one another. It really comes down to the fact that there's some type of gain to be had by accessing this information, whether it's competitive advantage, whether it's a financial advantage, or whether it's just mischief. There's some gain to be had by somebody behind the scenes looking to achieve this information. And so one of the things that we want to do as part of maintaining these secure systems is to try to automate and remove human kind of interaction out of as much of it as we possibly can. Not just from the integrity standpoint, but also from a consistency standpoint. Having an automation solution can actually help maintain a consistent set of jobs, making sure those jobs complete successfully. And that's something that typically humans, are going to struggle with a little bit. We're a little bit more inconsistent than a computer system. And having that as an automated procedure is going to be very beneficial to us in a production environment.
That's exactly right. And, we've talked about that in areas other than just PCI compliance, too, is everything that you can automate, you take away that the possibility of errors because everything's going to run in the right order at the right time, et cetera. So when we're talking about an enterprise scheduler like Skybot, with these requirements as far as change control and moving from development or test to production, being able to automate that process, the export and the import, and again, to keep the humans away from it and let the computers do those moves. Separating test from production. Make sure that you've got good control for the access to your production system. You can leave your test system maybe wide open to any of your developers or any staff that needs to get to it, but make sure that you've got just specific people based on what their job responsibilities are, maybe a business unit, to have access to your production system. So you want to make sure in whatever job scheduler that you have that you can be very granular in the access that people have. Those of you that might be using cron or the Windows Task Scheduler, those schedulers don't give you the flexibility for the security that's needed. Also, when providing secure systems, you want to make sure that you've got a high availability option, that database is replicated so that you can assure that the operations will be smooth in case of a failure. That replication needs to be in real time so that you don't lose any history, which is part of your reporting options when you do some kind of a failover. And again, you want to automate that process of moving from test to production and be able to manage your users, maybe manage them from a central point. Here you can see in our Skybot setup that we can interface with an LDAP or an Active Directory server so that you can set those users up once on your network and manage the access that they have from that single point.
Yeah, that's huge from a compliance standpoint, is maintaining that consistency. I will certainly issue a word of caution for those folks that do maintain duplicate environments, making sure that your data is just as secure on a test system. Maybe you cleanse it as you move it from one side to the other, because if I'm hacking the environment, I don't really care if I'm getting production data or if I'm getting a duplicate of production data. It's all the same to me. It's still going to be valuable. So we want to consider automation, not only for production, but for other tasks as well, so that, again, we can limit the human interaction needed on all those sets of servers, really.
And Robin, that is so true. I was at a user group in this, I don't know, what are we in, winter, this fall, at a local user group, and one of the guys gave a presentation on masking test data. And it is so true that how many times have you been asked in the operations area, would you copy these files over to test? And that's what they're using is production data. And he gave some great examples of how you can mask that data to make sure that you're not storing copies and copies and copies of your production data that's not secured. So huge hole. I'm going to try and get him to do a webinar with me, I think in March or April. And talk a little bit about that. Yeah, it was
definitely a hot topic. It doesn't do you any good to secure your production if you've got a duplicate of that sitting out there. And in using a scheduler like Skybot to actually instigate processes that will go out and perform some type of cleanse over the database, whether it's masking or whether it's replacing, sensitive data with some bogus data before it's actually made available to programmers or developers.
Exactly, and that kind of feeds into this requirement 7 as far as access to that cardholder data. Like you said, whether it's in production or in test, it's the same data.
Yep, it sure is. And so restricting access to that data is really needing to be done on a need-to-know basis. So as a consumer of the data, we need to be able to prove a business case for why we're being able to see that data potentially manipulated on a limited basis. So we want to make sure that anything that is accessing the database is doing so legitimately. We want to have some bells and whistles that allow us to be notified anytime somebody accesses that data without coming through the anticipated access methodology. But again, having some type of enterprise scheduler is going to allow you to remove some of the human interaction in this conversation, so that when there are jobs that need to run that will process data or post things, perhaps we don't need to rely on somebody kicking that off and perhaps having access to the file in order to be able to run that process. The automation task can provide those necessary privileges and be able to fulfill that task completely without any type of ulterior motive.
Exactly, and I think, again, we're talking about security and being able to secure that production environment or any environment. So that comes into play for this requirement as well, and restricting access to that credit card data or any other critical files that are on your system. If you've got an enterprise scheduling tool that sits on top of your data and sits on top of your scripts, and it can be managed by a group such as production control and allow them to have just access to the scheduler. They don't have to have any kind of security officer or root access, because all of that can be done at the administrator level, and then production control can just set up the jobs, move the jobs, and then automate the processing of those tasks. They don't need access to the files. They don't need access to anything critical. Again, this shows where we need that clear division of duties between development and operations. I remember back in the olden days when I first started in the IT, that the developers at the hospital that I started at kind of ran everything, and it took a while and a culture change to be able to get that line between development and operations. And also a lot of smaller shops, sometimes those lines are blurred. So in order to be able to restrict those, you need to be very clear in who has what type of access to what data and what options.
Absolutely. And requirement 10 is definitely one of the biggest components that we're going to be able to help with when we talk about enterprise scheduling, because we need to be able to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. So building out audit trails is definitely a big focus for me on the PowerTech side of the business. But when we talk about automation, again, we're allowing the reduction of the amount of manual and human interactions with that sensitive data. In PCI talks primarily about cardholder data, but there's also reference to critical system files. So the concept of what is important to PCI is more than just credit card data. It actually goes to the integrity of the machine, making sure that any servers that are handling or touching any credit card data are secured holistically. So making sure that the system configuration can't be tampered with, that perhaps will compromise the operating system, because that's going to weaken any controls that you have over the actual cardholder data itself. So building out those history trails, knowing how your jobs are running, what completed successfully, perhaps if there's any jobs that are running out of cycle, maybe they run too long or too short. Having an audit trail over that type of environment is going to be beneficial to helping you ensure that that system is running in an anticipated state.
And having an easy way to be able to get to that information and provide that for your auditors.
Easy is the key, right? We want to make this so that the tool is doing the heavy lifting. We don't have to now sit and babysit an environment and spend the whole day running reports and interrogating them.
Exactly. And when the auditors show up, you don't have to want to spend, a couple of days going and tracking that information and pulling it together into some type of a format that makes sense to them. So you want to make sure that your schedule will include an audit log so that changes to production are easily tracked and reported on. Skybot tracks every change that's made to any job in the system. And again, we can schedule reports that will automatically email those every day or every week or every month to your auditing team. Also, you want to be able to see any exceptions to the schedule, any outages, failed jobs, like you said, jobs that run outside of their schedule or run outside of their regular time. Want to make it easy, again, to track those types of exceptions. So as you can see here, in the red or the pink highlights any problems that you have. So you want to be able to see those exceptions. Health Systems in all of its product lines has always talked about managing your systems by exception. And that's true if you're talking about PCI compliance as well. It's those exceptions that are important, and you want to be able to pull those out easily. So we do provide a number of canned reports that you can schedule daily, weekly, or monthly, like I said. Also, our database is secure, and you could create some custom reports from that database as well. Included in our canned reports are the audit history report, the job history report, as well as a security report that lists all of the users and what options they have access to. So usually what I've found with customers is between those three different reports, we will be able to meet the requirements that you have for your reporting.
There's some great dashboards in there too, and I think one of the things, per our prior discussion, is if I do have jobs that are out there that are designed to do some of that data cleanse, maybe masking or altering data, knowing that that job has been terminated by somebody is obviously a huge piece of ensuring that the integrity of the jobs that we have in place is maintained, because somebody starts tampering with that, that's potentially an attempt to cover tracks, and we need to be apprised of that. And having a schedule, be able to report those things to me is going to be critical.
Exactly. You don't want to have to go looking for them.
Yep. So requirement 12 here, the last one, is actually about maintaining a security policy. Now, unfortunately, too many organizations are configuring their systems and addressing what they believe are the security requirements of the enterprise without actually having a baseline document that says how they expect things to be configured. And the analogy I always give is every spring I clean up my garage, and invariably my teenagers are accessing my tools and moving things around. And come fall, the garage looks absolutely nothing like it did when I started with it in the spring.
Your kids use your tools?
Yeah, they do, and the kicker is they don't put them back. That's probably the problem I have with it more than anything. And you know what, I only have myself to blame because I should have a written policy that says, here's what the stuff is used for, and here are the penalties if I don't comply with those policies. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to security, we've got to maintain some level of baseline so we have something to measure ourselves against. It's great to go and clean up, secure a system, to become compliant, but if you don't have ongoing validations based on what your directives are, then how are you going to know if you're no longer doing what you said you were going to be doing? And so this documentation is a critical piece of that, not just PCI compliance, but pretty much any formal regulation is building that baseline of what we expect to do process-wise, and that way we've got some way of indicating if there is a non-compliant state. And I know you guys are doing a lot of that on the Skybot side because having the tool help you with documenting your job flow is a critical part of building out that documentation.
Exactly. And documentation, if you don't have that documentation built into your scheduler, then finding that can be a huge time consumer if you need to do that manually. Build flow charts, build Visio charts, etc., of the documentation of when jobs are running. Gather all of that information from various servers, etc. You certainly might be running across 5 or 10 or 15 or 100 different servers, and if you've got to go to each one and pull out that exception, that can take up all of your time. Your policies for data security and the retention of that history got to be clear, and your job scheduler's got to be able to support that policy that you've got put in place.
Well, let's face it, Pat, if something's difficult to do, what's the human tendency? We're not going to do it. So what we find is with a lot of customers who are using a tool that doesn't provide easy to interpret audit history they're not in a good state as far as knowing what's happening and what they need to react to. And that's definitely an area of improvement that they see when they switch over to a great automation tool like Skybot.
Right. You go through that automation process, those things get pushed off because they do take up huge amounts of time that is precious to everyone these days. So they get pushed off until crunch time, and then
right before the auditor walks in the door.
Exactly.
If the auditor's not there to say, I want to know that you looked at your system yesterday, they're there to know that you've been looking at your system all along. It's all about constant monitoring. And at the end of the day, why do we put in automation tools? We do it to make our life easier. And if we're automating things but then spending all of our time instead monitoring the automation and generating reports and things like that, we haven't really accomplished our end goal, which is to allow the computer to manage itself. Let the tool generate the reports. Ultimately, of course, you're going to be responsible for looking at those things and saying, yes, this is a problem, or no, it's not. But you shouldn't have to do the heavy lifting to get to a point where you're making a business decision from the data. A good tool should provide that data to you and allow you to simply sit back and say, yeah, everything looks good, or you know what, there's an issue here, I need to delve into what's going on.
Exactly. And how nice to be proactive. Set those reports up and proactively email them or send them off to your auditors. So you're providing that information before they even walk down the hall.
That would blow an auditor's mind, wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it? That's right. Look what I've got. So we kind of keep going back to these 3 points of audit, exception reporting, and role security. So if you've got a tool that makes those 3 areas easy to manage and easy to report on, you'll be able to work on other products and other projects that are innovative instead of those mundane kind of day-to-day tasks that can take up so much of your time. So in closing, talk a little bit about our Skybot scheduler. For those of you that are not familiar with it, we'd like to look at it as kind of the hub of your operations area, that we can reach out with our Skybot scheduler and automate jobs on different platforms and different applications, and we will pull that all together into a single screen, to a single pane of glass that you can monitor, that you can report on, that you can audit from, and kind of set it and forget it. And like Robin said, you don't want to be monitoring that. You want to be notified if there are any exceptions, which is what Skybot does so well, along with the other robot products as well. Well, that's what we wanted to talk about today on talking about PCI and how a job scheduler can kind of help you meet those requirements. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to take those. You can send us a chat message over on the right-hand side of the screen. We'll be here for a couple minutes to see if you do have any. Robin, thanks so much. I just love your experience and your expertise in the security area. I know you've been doing it for quite a while now, and
a couple of years.
I look forward to learning from you. Yeah, just a couple of years.
Well, I appreciate you having me again. You know, we are definitely here at Help Systems to help you folks with a lot of different aspects, from automation to security and compliance, and we appreciate the business from those of you that are already working with Help Systems. Pat did record the session today, so if you joined late and you would like to catch up, then feel free. We'll send that out to you typically within about 24 hours, along with the slide deck as well. So if you have any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out that way as well, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, and thanks, Robin, and we'll see you all next time.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All righty. Have a good day.
Thank you, Pat and Robin. Desafortunadamente hemos cumplido con el tiempo de este Webex. Nos han hecho llegar algunas preguntas. Estas las vamos a estar respondiendo durante el transcurso del día a través del correo. Muchas gracias por su tiempo el día de hoy. Mi nombre es Pablo López, consultor de Opera International. Espero escucharlos en un próximo Webex. Hasta luego.